Hello, my name is Mary. Welcome to the Build Vibrant Health podcast. Today we have Karen Pasquini on. She is a biodynamic craniosacral therapist and energy healer. She has been a huge part of my own healing journey, and I'm really excited to have her on today to talk a little bit about biodynamic cranial therapy and what she's doing to help people with it. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. Well, we're in your house, so thank you for having me. So tell us how you got started on this path with biodynamic craniosacral.
So I was introduced to craniosacral probably in 2002, and there's different varieties. And so I tried a few, and a friend of mine gave me a book, said, read this. And when I read the biodynamic approach, I just felt like I had come home. So yeah, I had a session, and it was like nothing I had ever experienced. I really felt my whole body correcting. I felt bones moving, scar tissue releasing from an old surgery. The next day it was like it released, and I just knew that I had to learn everything about this.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
And when was that?
That was probably 2003, I think.
Okay. So you just had one experience. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that book and that session. And then, of course, I took the courses and just felt head over heels in love with it. And yeah, did everything I could to take classes and host a training.
So what is biodynamic craniosacral?
So it's different from the other types of craniosacral in that we work with the tides in the body. So you can compare it to the ocean. If you go to the ocean and you're on the seashore, you'll have the fast waves. And that's where most everyone starts. That's where I started. It's kind of like the upledger approach, the fast waves. Then you go under the water and the tides become a little bit slower. We call that a mid tide. And then you go down to the bottom of the ocean and it's really, really slow. And that's long tide. And that's where the magic happens. And that is, so when we're growing in utero, we're in a long tide space. It's really, really slow. And so we say how we grow is how we heal. So in that slow rhythm, and it's nothing about living a slow life. It's about enabling your body to access those slower rhythms like we did in utero. And how the body does that is through presence with another person. And so it creates safety in the nervous system, and then the body can self-correct and heal.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think of the ocean as a womb. So that's really interesting because you're talking about, like, I think of the ocean as the womb of the earth. And so if you're talking about the embryonic development at would you say the low tide, like the bottom of the ocean, that metaphorically makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it comes from Dr. Upledger living near the ocean. And he was an osteopath and just seeing similar patterns in the ocean and in the body too.
Well, maybe that's one reason why the ocean feels so calming to our nervous system.
Could be.
Is it that same? So when you're assessing the pulse, the cranial rhythm is what you call it. Is that similar to the ebb and flow of the ocean?
Yes, in that it changes. Yes. Yeah. And the ocean is kind of governed by the moon. So that's the same thing that happens with us. The moon can have an effect on the body. Yes. So it ebbs and flows, but it also shows you what it needs to show you. So the body loves to tell its story. And when someone shows up, like a practitioner, and you have this healing therapeutic space, the body just loves that. It thrives off that. And it goes, yes, now I can tell my story. And so it tells what it's been through. And in the beginning, it's usually a little bit more active, and then it goes slower. Once it tells its story, just like a friend, you sit down with a friend and they say what they've been through. And then they feel so much better that they got to express that. Body is the same. And then it can go deeper and access the longer tides, the slower tides.
I know I've experienced that because Karen has worked on me. Like I said, she's been a part of my healing journey. And when I first started working with you, that was in the summer of 2020. My body was in a freeze mode. Can you talk a little bit how craniosacral can help pull the nervous system out of a freeze mode? And you can use me as an example.
Yeah, very good question. In fact, recognizing a freeze mode is probably one of the main gifts of biodynamic work, because a freeze feels like there's nothing happening. So you can put your hands on someone, and ideally you should feel the cranial rhythm going up and down like this. if they're in a freeze, there's no movement. And there's not a lot you can do. So there's things that we do to support that. And then I find through different methods that it comes out of the freeze every single time. But the freeze comes from shock or overwhelm or trauma or chronic illness. It can even come from environmental things. I've had that with myself and with people. So it's danger. The body's sensing danger. So it kind of slows down to prepare for impending danger that it's sensing. So yeah, it's all about creating safety and presence.
Well, and how does biodynamic craniosacral tie into energy work? Is it the same thing?
Little different because biodynamic craniosacral has its roots in osteopathy. So originally the osteopaths were, I mean, if you break a bone, you'd go see an osteopath and they would reset it. Or they would do chiropractic comes from it also, you know, they would do like high velocity thrusts and really adjust things. And then the original osteopaths started doing less and less and found they got better results just from holding and tracking the more subtle rhythms. So it's definitely something you can measure, you can feel. It's similar to energy work in that it's subtle, but we're not working as much with energy. I do energy work, but it's kind of different than craniosacral.
What kind of energy work do you do?
So I muscle test and I find the energetic imprints of substances, pathogens, toxins that are in the body. And then I work through the brain and I clear it. I say that's energy work because it's in the field generally. Yeah. It's almost like the body or toxins have an energetic signature that they're kind of broadcasting.
Yeah.
And so when you're muscle testing, you're picking up on that energetic signature to identify it, and then you clear it.
Right. And so something could physically be out of the body, but maybe still have an imprint energetically that needs to be cleared,
Totally.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So sometimes it's not even there. We're just clearing the residual, but it's kind of like a footprint. Like a footprint got left. The person's not there, but the footprint.
Do you feel like it needs to be cleared first before it can physically leave the body fully? Or does it help move things along faster?
I would say both. Yeah. I think clearing it first helps it exit if it's still there. And if it's already gone and it's still just the footprint remaining, then it's almost like the last missing piece that needs to go so the body can truly heal.
That makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
But how does this work when you're doing it remote? Because Karen sees a lot of people remotely. She does do some in-person work, but I know you're transitioning more to online.
Yeah.
How, if biodynamic cranial is based in osteopathic and holding, how is that done?
Very good question. Yeah. So a lot of us figured this out during the pandemic that, you know, you can feel the body has its rhythm, its cranial rhythm that goes up and down. And if you put your hand over someone, you can still kind of feel that motion. I mean, I had someone in 2015 that I couldn't touch because she had polymyalgia rheumatica and was just in excruciating pain. So I lifted my hand off of her skin and she was saying, ouch, 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 ouch. And then I had to inch back literally until I was, I don't know how many, 6 feet maybe away from her. And I thought, what am I going to do back here? So I just put my hands up in the air, do that or end the session. So I did that and I realized I could still feel it even from that far away. I was kind of surprised, but no one could touch her. There was nothing we could do and it worked and she got better.
Wow.
And she was so happy and the family was really happy. And so then, yeah, the pandemic hit and I realized, wow, you can even do this from further distance. And I believe it's because our bodies are energetic beings. And so that frequency, it's like electricity that extends off the body. So if you have sensitive hands, I mean, I've been doing it for 32 years, so lots of experience, lots of training, and I can feel things with my hands now. You can feel it from a distance. And I know some of the French osteopaths are now teaching this too. I know one osteopath, 90% of his clients now see him remotely rather than in person, because believe it or not, sometimes works better from a distance.
Yeah.
So,
well, that goes back to what we were talking about this morning about the field connection.
Exactly.
And for someone that thinks sounds a little woo-woo,
yeah,
you can both believe in God and have a religion, like a faith background, and also do this kind of work.
100%. And
Right.
actually, it actually kind of like honors God, because the body is so incredibly made and designed. And once you really like slow down and listen, yeah, it will teach you, it will show you. And it's, yeah, you learn more about the
Right.
creator. And yeah,
Yeah. And you've been able to work on animals too.
I have.
Right.
Yeah. Horses, dogs, and cats. Yeah.
That's super cool. And do you find, I know you worked on Andromeda, my soul dog, if you're not, if you're a listener, but she like, I remember you were working on her because she had been bullied by some dogs that day, and was like being cornered and just was really skittish and just kept jumping into my arms. And Karen worked on her, and almost immediately Andromeda just like relaxed. And I remember she put her head on your arm and just was like, just kind of like,
she did. That was so sweet.
I was like,
She,
and then fell asleep as you were
Yeah.
working on.
she really felt it. Animals always they're very in tune, sometimes more
Mhm.
than people.
Yeah, especially, I mean, all animals, but especially horses are very
Especially,
intuitive.
yeah.
And what kind of things do you notice with the animals?
I had a horse that I worked on that was actually lame, and they didn't know why. And so I did my muscle testing, and I found that it was an ulcer in her stomach. So I worked with the ulcer, and then I treated with craniosacral her leg. She was running and
Wow.
bucking and riding. Her owner said she rode better than she had in a couple of years. So just after one session, they
That's
respond
really
really
cool.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for someone who is going through chronic illness, I think a lot of people maybe watching this are struggling with health issues, whether that be like mold toxicity or Lyme disease. How does craniosacral fit into that picture of chronic illness?
Oh boy, it just does so much. I mean, I've had people with autoimmune conditions go away. Their blood tests prove that it's better. It heals trauma. It allows scar tissue to melt. Toxins can get stuck in scar tissue. The body's fluid, and fluid needs to move. So, it helps remove wastes. I've had a lot of people detox anesthesia in their sessions. I mean, I work a lot with the mold community, and so yeah, I can clear mold toxins, and it's more than that. Obviously, it's heavy metals, as you know, and radioactive elements, viruses, all sorts of things. So it's like, I mean, we say it's like taking the load off the donkey's back. It just takes some weight off the body and toxins that are in there. And sometimes people need help with the clearing, and then the body just kicks in and does its thing.
Yeah, the
It's very
body is
forgiving.
so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and if someone is wanting to work with you, how would they find you?
So I have an office here in the village of Oak Creek in Sedona, Arizona, and also I work remotely online over Zoom. So that's another way too. I do a lot of that these days.
Cool.
Yeah.
So her website I'll share in the show notes below here. We're going to keep it a brief interview, but maybe next round we'll go a little bit more in depth about more on craniosacral therapy, but hopefully this gives you a good overview. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
I think that's it. I mean, my website is artfullybalanced.com, and everything is pretty much there. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing things can happen when you start to re-regulate and rebalance the nervous system and give it the tools to do that. We're built for connection and community. We're not meant to be isolated. So I think that's a really big reason why craniosacral helps, because it provides someone, and Karen, you can probably tell, is a very like gentle, sweet person. And she just provides a space that your body is able to feel safe. And I've worked with her both in person and remotely and had really profound effects.
Yeah. I mean, we're just made that way. It's based off of mirror neurons. So if you think about if an infant is crying or in distress, what they do is they look at mom to see how mom is. If mom's in distress, then baby says, okay, the world is not safe, so I'm not safe, and they can't self-regulate. But if mom's okay, they look up and see mom's okay, then their nervous system goes, and it takes a deep breath, like, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm safe, the world is safe. So if we didn't have that growing up, I mean, no one has a perfect childhood, but obviously things happen. The therapeutic setting of craniosacral can really rewire and really heal those moments of when that happened, so that the nervous system can self-regulate on its own like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And the body is like really hardwired for health. So we find that once a new pathways are there, it likes that and it goes for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does make sense. Actually, you bring up a really good point. I was going to close out, but I have one more question for you. So, so you're saying that this work can help even if you're not cognizant about something of why it's an issue for you. Or like maybe like memories from childhood or even in utero.
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, so we're trained, our training is a lot of birth trauma, because that comes up a lot. I mean, when we're in bliss for 9 months and all of a sudden we go through this small opening and lots of lights and scary environment. And so birth trauma and in utero comes up a lot. Yeah. So, and you don't even have to know the details. That's nice. You don't, a lot of people don't have any idea what their birth was like, and it still heals. I can tell. Yeah. Sometimes I'll feel it and I'll get their story. Yeah.
And that's what happened this summer with me.
Yeah.
So I'll just share a little personal story. When Andromeda passed, she was like my child. She was like my daughter. And we had such a bond, and it took Karen like putting it together. She was doing a session on me because my body was in this freeze shutdown mode for a good like month after, maybe probably more. And yeah, you worked on me, and what came up, like I kept waking up at the same time every single night, having the same things happen in my body. And I would wake up with like my heart pounding out of my chest and like full on anxiety. And that I didn't know what that was from, but as you were starting to work on me, what came up was the birth trauma, and that same exact reaction that was happening to me at night happened during our session. We were able to walk through that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your first reaction was like, I think this is related to your birth.
Yeah. And I remember it shifted things after that. And that's what I was saying. It's like, that was being held in your tissues for all these years. And finally we created that space and it was able to tell its story.
And it almost took like Andromeda's passing and what happened there to mirror that and bring that up.
Yes.
Present day.
Exactly.
And I remember you saying it was really birth because I kept turning my body and my head to the left.
Yeah, that's a common thing. Babies, usually their left shoulder comes up first and they're laying on, we call it a left side lie. They're laying on their left. Sometimes it's the right. I had someone this last week, it was the right shoulder. And that happened in Zoom. Actually, I've had people even process their birth over Zoom, but yeah, for you. And so we can kind of encourage it to happen a little bit more, you know, and see which, if your head wanted to turn to the side, which way would it go? And then it can gently support the process, the birth process to heal.
And that's your body somatically remembers things on like an unconscious level. Yeah,
that's the key to healing, because what we're aware of is great. And it's what we're aware of is like the doorway into that. But it's the things that we're not aware of that the body remembers that we don't are the ones that affect our endocrine system, all of that, you know, it's back here, the lower brain center of hormones and all of that, hunger, all the automatic functions. Yeah.
Do you have a good resource or like book? I know you mentioned a book in the beginning that you said was really good.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that one for most people. I personally would recommend Wisdom in the Body by Michael Kern. It helps you fall in love with craniosacral therapy. And then the next one after that would probably be Franklin Sills. I don't remember the name of the book, but he tells you how to do it. So those two books are good starting places.
Okay, great. Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, I know you have to go.
I do.
So
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
And you can reach Karen at ourfullybalance.com. I'll include the info below. Have a beautiful and blessed day. If you enjoy this podcast, or if you know someone that would benefit from listening, please subscribe and share with a loved one.